Hello, everyone. This is MeasureCast, the data-driven way of digital marketing show. And today is our seventh episode. And if you want to check our other episodes, please go to our YouTube channel, which is MeasureSchool. And today we have a really hot topic, and this is talking about analytics services and money. How much should you charge for your services? And I have a very special guest. Actually, it's not a guest, it's a very special person who I have been learning from for all these years, since the very beginning of my career in this field. And this is Julian. Hi, Julian.
Hi, thank you for having me as a guest or as another person here.
No, we have been waiting for you. So you were on the paternity leave, and everyone was missing you so much. We were trying to handle everything, but I have to say it was really difficult without you.
Oh well, I think you managed everything pretty well, and I'm excited to be back and talk a bit more about measurement and analytics.
Yeah, there have been many changes in the field, so it's exciting to see all the dynamics. Yes, there's something new coming out, also G4 out there with new features. So something interesting every day.
Every day, everything is happening pretty fast, and that's the cool thing about our industry, I think. And I don't well, it will not stop. So otherwise, it would be pretty easy to do this kind of work. So I'm looking forward to talk more about measurement and analytics and yeah, all the stuff that is now coming out. We are still learning here as well, right? So it's not just that
Absolutely.
I know everything already. All the news come to me as well, and I need to try them out. Yeah, so I will see. The future is exciting. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, I absolutely love this field, this profession, if you can say so, right? Because this is also about learning the whole time, as you say. So you're learning
Yeah,
every
yeah, yeah.
day.
And we are essentially we are trainers here, right? So we kind of pick up the stuff and then we try it out maybe in a different fashion than some professional would do, and then teach it to others. So that's always exciting. That's always the thing that keeps me going as well. It's not just about like, oh, I'm gonna try out this new feature and implement it for a client, but we are actually also giving that knowledge to other people who will then spread hopefully the word around and use the features.
Yeah, this is the fun part of the whole process. Testing, making mistakes as well. Yeah, because we're also making mistakes, just testing things out and learning. But today's topic is related to selling a bit and to money. And maybe such a question which can be kind of, um, I would say, delicate. But what do you think? Is there an average hourly rate for implementation services? So how should people
Yeah,
charge
I
for
mean,
this?
this really depends on what you are doing and how you are doing these things. So from my side, when I started out selling implementation services, I think the field was also not yet as well known out there, and we can really say that just like any other art form out there, you can charge a little, as little as possible, but also as much as possible. So, depending on the complexity and the willingness of the client to pay, you can charge anything from an hourly rate of, I don't know, $30, I'd say, is like a very small minimum to multiple hundreds of dollars a day, because these consultants who do sometimes these implementations, they are sometimes paid as consultants that really come into the business, and you can get them on a daily rate, for example, and when you break it down, you can get paid a couple of $100 per hour in order to get that work done. And it always depends on how you create the project and so on. But if you just get started with analytics and you want to go out there in the field and build a portfolio of things, maybe or portfolio of projects, you may underprice yourself a little bit and go under the market price. And if you're more experienced, you obviously want to push that up. So at the beginning, you probably want to be closer to that livable wage in your area, depending on where you live. I guess in Europe or in North America, Maybe it's more of the $50 an hour mark, where you say, hey, that's my minimum that I actually need to make in order to make this a viable business. But you can push yourself up there quite quickly. So if you know some implementations and people trust you, that's always like the question of how much do you can you get somebody to trust you, then easily you can be at the $80 to the $100 mark to even more, depending on where you sell yourself and who you have as clients as well. So not really an average here or what you can earn, but yeah, the sky's the limit most of the times. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a very good point about even just giving lower prices to find new clients when you're building up your brand. Because as I understand, so basically the price depends on your expertise, on the years of experience, but also on the brand. And because if you're a well-known company with a good name, so everyone also wants to pay additionally for your brand, just because this is how it works.
Yeah,
So
and as a brand, you can always just think of a promise, right? The brand is a promise to the customer that you have built over time. So if you have a really strong brand, they trust you, like Apple. Why would you buy Apple? The brand is really the promise that this stuff will not break, or it has a certain quality, or it has a certain feel to the product itself. And that's built up over time, right? And that's why you have no problem of giving out hundreds or even thousands of dollars for certain things of Apple because you trust in the brand. And that's kind of the same thing when it comes to consultancy or helping people out with services. If you have a brand, or if you have been recommended by somebody else, then they might say, okay, let's just, although this person is a little bit more expensive than the next person, you are not as comparable anymore, and they will say, I trust this brand because the brand actually, I know that they will deliver, or I think they will deliver based on the promise that they make with this stance.
yeah, this is amazing. I absolutely love the statement that brand is a promise. Actually, very philosophical, I have to say, but this is actually true. This is valid. This is how it works.
Yeah.
And also, when it comes to projects, yeah, because there are different projects, and sometimes it can be a bit difficult to evaluate the scope. Yeah, so how is there any specific way you can determine, okay, so I'm going to spend so many hours on this one, or do you just do it like on the go when you're implementing?
Yeah. So there's really two philosophies. If you go hourly at the beginning, maybe you say, I have the set hourly rate, I don't know how long it will take, then you are on the safe side, obviously, right? That you can take 20 hours, 30 hours, and the client will pay, hopefully, at the end, because you kind of said, I don't know how long it will take. But most likely they also want to have an estimate of like, how long would it take you? Well, it could take 20, could take 30 hours, could take longer. And what you can do is, or what you kind of need to know is the scope of, to be able to think through what needs to be done, and then give your best guesstimate, your best estimate of how long that will take. Always put in a buffer of 50% even of the time. So just double the amount of hours that you think you will need, because oftentimes you run into problems and it actually takes longer. As analytics implementers, we may not be just sitting there and going into Google Tag Manager and configuring tags, but we also need to communicate. We need to find out what the client wants. We need to follow up with the client or the developers in order to see if everything works correctly. We might need to check the data later on in order for the data to come through correctly and so on. That needs to be estimated. So as an analytics project like GA4 implementation, there might be much more around this than what meets the eye. And so I think that you need to build up the experience, first of all, to make that work. The other thing is depending on your pricing. So if you do hourly, you obviously need to know how long does it take. But there are other pricing models out there. You could price per project and say like, okay, an analytics implementation, I usually charge 2K for this or 5K or whatever, depending on the size of your website. And there's a lot of factors that come into it. But then you kind of put a lot of things on the line and say, this is the price. it gives the client a lot of predictability because they know, okay, I need to spend 2K on this project. But then we know that the freelancer, the person that conducts the project, needs to deliver within that time frame, right? And that could go over. Sometimes you charge way too little, and in the end you spend hundreds of hours on an implementation. But sometimes, and if you have done it long enough, you might find that sweet spot price where you can say, I charge 5K, 10K for this project, but actually in terms of hourly rate, it just takes me 5 hours to do or something like that, right? So you can kind of then price it based on the value that it actually gives the client, and that's called value-based pricing as well. And then obviously there are other pricing models which are not as common in the analytics space to do it performance-based. So actually say, the more I do for you, the more I get paid, or the faster I do it for you, the more I get paid, or the more outcome that you have, the more I get paid. So in PPC worlds, you might have a percentage of your ad spend is your cost of running the campaign, or the cost of setting up your Google Ads account, which is kind of cool because then if the campaign grows and you spend more money, which needs to be profitable money, then you grow with the client as well. And then it's really value on the value that the client receives as well. So there are different pricing models. Depending on that, you need to do your estimations. And yeah, unfortunately, there's no set rules. This and this is what you need to charge for certain things.
Yeah, but it's also a very good point about calls, because very often we tend to underestimate time for spent on calls with developers and explaining how to implement data layer, how to set up this and that. Actually, it can be way, way longer
Yeah, and
than you can
communication
expect.
is key in this area, right? The analytics is not really just about like implementing and then they have the data, but actually communicating what that data means and how they can get value out of it. That's very important.
You're kind of reading my mind because this is something I wanted to ask, just but later, especially how to find good professionals. But we will talk
Okay.
about the services for now. And maybe another question, so maybe you could recommend some tools for tracking time for implementation, or just maybe using Google Sheets, or you don't use any at all,
Yeah.
just because this could be helpful for some freelancers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't. There's some tools out there, obviously time tracking tools that you can use, depending on how much you work with clients. You might, and the pricing model as well, right? So if you again, if you do hourly rate, obviously you need to check your time somehow. And sometimes the client doesn't really care about the timesheet, but sometimes they want to know exactly, okay, what have you worked on? And even for your sake, if you later on want to determine the profitability of this project, it might make sense to track the time, although the client doesn't want to have a timesheet in the end. So you know, okay, I spent 10 hours on this project, and I only billed him 6 hours or whatever, because that was the price that we kind of had. So in terms of tools, depending on what you're after, you can do it simply in a spreadsheet and put in your time and then do the delta, and then you know how much time you spent on this particular task. But there are also automated tools out there that actually track your time themselves. So there's like Time Doctor, I think. I can't really remember off the top of my head. I never really used them. I know that Upwork has, for example, something built into their system. So if you're a freelancer with them, you can track your time as well. So there are online tools out there, browser extensions. But I think a quick Google search will give you the answer that you're looking for.
Yeah, thank you. And also, one question related to the burning topic, and this is specifically evaluating the scope of GA4 migration projects. So, how do you evaluate those?
Yeah.
Because we are getting many projects, but you have also to assess them somehow. Yeah,
Yes.
but the GA4
Yeah,
migration
it's a
can be
tricky
different.
one. In the end, what you are always trying to do when you do estimations is to figure out all the variables that are involved, but also what does success look like for the client? So if you ask the client what do you want, and they may say, oh, we just want a GA4 migration, you might also want to ask them like, okay, what will you do with this GA4 migration? Who is using that data? What data is important to you, and so on. So there's a lot of evaluating going on beforehand to know which variables tie into the price. And obviously the size of the website also is a big, huge factor in this, because if you have a small little website that you want to switch over, maybe a WordPress blog, then it's different because the plugins are all out there than a completely custom site that has been built with, that's a single page application, for example. So there's a lot of different variables that go in. One is does the client actually want? What are the technical abilities that you need to bring to the project, and what are the nuances that we need to build into this migration? And then later on, like, what does the client actually, what brings him, and what do you think brings the client value? So if you think about like a client saying, hey, I want to just be able to look at this and this data, then maybe you need to build a dashboard for them in Data Studio, or you might need to have some kind of BigQuery export already. And then the scope of the project obviously gets much bigger. But we should always break it down from the client's needs. What do they actually want, and how does success look like? And then we can go from there. And a migration is not equal to a migration. We want to make the client happy in the end. So that's what you need to evaluate when you are putting together such a quote for the client.
Yeah, identifying success is a key here. And maybe a question, more specific one. Do you have any specific questions that you ask clients when you start talking about their new projects? So this is about identifying their goals, but
do you mean now for GA4 migrations in general?
Like in general.
Yeah.
Oh, we can talk about GA4 actually.
Yeah,
because
okay.
It's
Okay, I mean, in the end, you always want to find out what the client wants and needs, right? You are the experts in the analytics field, so in the end, you can't really say the client already knows what he wants. Google Analytics and analytics as a whole is not as well known, let's put it this way, as, for example, I don't want to say graphic design or so, but when you specifically know what you want in a project, like, okay, I want a blog post written, right? The scope is pretty defined. You know what blog post was written, how many words, for example. And in analytics, there's just so many more factors, as well as you have the added thing that they might not know everything there is to know about GA4 or about the project that you have at hand. So you need to brainstorm with them, and you need to strategize with them. And then strategy is another huge part of an implementation that you need to have before you start putting it into place, putting the project actually into place, or implementing anything. So talking them through what actually normally is your product, your process of implementation. So for us, for example, it's scoping out, first of all, or auditing, first of all, their existing analytics implementation, finding out what data do they have in there, how many tools are connected, what is on the website itself implemented already, what technologies are playing together, and what do you need to take into account. Then the second part is to come up with a measurement plan. So maybe some data of their UA implementation or what they have been using before is not needed anymore. So you can take that out, but other data wants to be added. So we need to come up with a plan of action of what we need to implement. And then you can always get a approval of your client saying, okay, this is what we're going to implement now. It's going to take this much time. And then you implement, actually. That can take several weeks, several months even, depending on the scope of the project. And then you have the Q&A, right? You need to make sure that the data actually arrives in the right format in the system that is actually usable. And in the end, once you have the right data, you have the right information there, there could be some other projects that are follow-ons, such as building dashboards or training the team on the data, or making sure that they have everything in one view, or where they want to see it, or sending them an email report and so on. or even consulting them on the analysis. So you help them out to actually make sense of the data itself. So all of this together is kind of the thing that you need to want to find out before you start working with the client and talking them through what they need to expect when they're working with you.
Yeah, so as you can see, this is a comprehensive process. So it's not like one thing that you just sell and it's done. So it's again about communication, about defining strategy,
Yeah.
goals, and all those things that you have mentioned. And by the way, talking about tools, what are the tools an analytics professional should manage? So
Okay, yeah.
do you have any like
I
set of
mean, on
tools?
the one side, the work that we do, I guess analytics professionals can also always be fluid, from data scientist to somebody who just does Google Analytics installations. For us, we do a lot of implementations, and the things that we need to know, and you know this from my videos as well, and you can just see my videos. What tools do I use to debug an installation, to know where things are at? What are the things that I need to look into in order to see if Google Analytics is working or if the hits are sent and so on. And depending on your use case, you might need to take some professional tools at hand than just the free tools that I usually use out there. So for example, pulling data into a spreadsheet or into Google Data Studio, you can use the Supermetrics, for example, for it. If you want to debug a mobile app, for example, you might need to know where the hits are coming from, and if they all work correctly. And there might be tools out there like Charles Proxy that you need to buy in order to know and can read the actual web requests that are going out from your mobile phone. But then also, depending on the client, if they have special requirements, you obviously need to implement new tools that are also something that you would need to buy for them. There are auditing tools out there as well that help you out to build blueprints of how the tracking should look like, and then you can put them onto the platform, and then they will have an alarm for you if the tracking doesn't work, for example. So there's a lot of tools that you can bring into this whole mix. But outside of the technical bits of running a project, you might also want to have something like a project management tool. So you'll be able to know where your project stands and what tickets are still open, or what tasks are still open. And well-known one is easy to get started. One is Trello, or one of the other productivity tools we internally use, ClickUp. But there's also other tools like obviously Asana or Jira, for example. So there are a lot of productivity tools out there that you could use for project management. I think important as well is a communication tool. So ask your client of how you want to communicate. Is it just over email? Sometimes you want to get them onto Slack. So we have an internal Slack where we invite our clients to write us directly. So we have a quick line of communication. And then I think an interesting one, I guess, that I also use is oftentimes Loom. So a video recording software that can easily be helped used to train your client, right? You can show him, hey, I've set this up and that up, and then we can send over a Loom to our client, and they know without having to write them an email or having screenshots, they can just forward that video, and they find that really, really helpful as well. As well as obviously getting on calls. So if you have a Zoom account or so, that is, or Google Hangouts, that's very helpful to talk to clients and make this actually work, make the communication work in your project as well.
Actually, this is a very cool way of communicating. Yeah, because usually everyone is talking via emails, but Loom is a good way, especially if something is not working. It's way, way easier to do troubleshooting. You don't even have to schedule a call, so you quickly record a video and you just can identify a mistake, for example, or something.
Yeah, even for clients. So if they send you something over, because sometimes they don't even see what you see on the screen. Like you see the URL and you see the UTMs are malformed or whatever. So that is very helpful to also introduce your client to it if they don't use it yet.
Yeah, and ClickUp is also very good. It's not an ad, by the way, so but we are using it. A very nice tool, easy to manage, and I love it. So it's really easy to work as a team in this one and managing
Yeah.
all the tasks when you have
And
multiple projects
and and
running.
ClickUp, you can call us up if you want to be a sponsor of the channel.
And we were talking more about services from the perspective of a seller, but what about a buyer? So how can you identify if a person is a good expert, right? So you're looking for someone, for example, for chief for migration. How can you just determine, okay, this person is good?
Yeah, I mean, for my side, I always when I hire employees, it's always a thing that it's kind of a risk that you're taking, right? You're spending a lot of money. You don't know if this money is well spent. So how do you evaluate the person in front of you? The first rule is obviously to talk to multiple people, not just one person. Although, if you get a strong recommendation and you just want to get a project done, then that might be already your trust already well spent. So then you don't have to look around. But if you're completely new on to that scene and want to get an analytics project done, then maybe reach out to multiple people and have conversations with them. In terms of how can you evaluate their skill set, it really depends if they're a freelancer or an agency. I mean, with an agency, you probably will have a contract with them, so they need to deliver certain things, and that needs to be put into the contract. So they will tell you, we will create this or that for you, and we will set this up for you. So you kind of are safe on the side of like, okay, if you're fine with the price and everything is negotiated, if they screw it up, you can pull out your money, hopefully, from that end, right? Obviously, it's still a huge drain, but I would say a professional already knows, okay, these will be the deliverables, and I want to get this done, and this is the money that we'll pay, and that kind of takes away a little bit of the risk itself. But if you're looking for somebody that is maybe more a freelancer and you're trying to evaluate are they good or not, one side obviously certificates. I'm not really a big fan of certificates. You can get the Google one pretty easily. Obviously, there are some of these courses out there that where you really need to do something for your certificate and you actually spend a lot of time. But from my perspective, having a conversation is the first point of attack. You need to kind of a little bit find out if they know what they're talking about. Now, some people are really good at talking, and sometimes you don't know if they are just putting out some nice acronyms for you to be impressed. But again, there we can take a peek from the playbook of people who hire developers, right? Sometimes you don't know if the developer actually knows what they're talking about. So you actually, and this is also money well spent, you could, if it's an important project, you could hire somebody that maybe is there out on an hourly basis, is maybe a senior implementer and has been doing this for many years, and you trust them, and just pay them money to interview another guy that you would hire, right? This expert that you think would be the right fit. And then they might find out, okay, is this a good person or is it a bad person? Again, this is just risk mitigation. You never know exactly how it will turn out, but you can obviously do that. Now, the other factor, which is a huge thing in recruiting, we don't do it too often, is references. So if they have worked for somebody else beforehand, and a freelancer should be able to just tell you, yeah, I work for this, and this company, and you can contact this, and this person to find out if I've done everything correctly and if how I worked. Obviously, I don't know if you want to go through this kind of hassle, but it may be well worth it to get the right person for your project.
Or given 16 personalities test.
Yeah,
I have to say that was a very good one.
well, yeah, I do personality tests, for example. This is more on the employee level, right? You want to find out if this person can work with your team for a long time and if they have the right attributes. Now, some people, I mean, even 16 personalities and all of these tests, Myers-Briggs, is very pseudo scientific. But again, for me, it just like gives me a little bit of okay, I think I get the right person here to work with the team and not get somebody in that totally will go off the board with our values as well.
Oh, that one is so realistic. Like all of my friends actually got tested and everyone like so precise. But coming back to the topic, so talking about skills, what skills make an expert successful, or better to say, an analytics professional successful? So maybe some just a list of skills or
Yeah, I mean, also depending on what he will do for you. Implementation, I think if they can program, they already know a little bit about how a computer works and how an analytics implementation might work, right? So if they say, hey, in a past job, I was a programmer or I learned programming in university or something like that, that's already a cool little skill that you can build up. The second part, I guess, is yeah, it's a bit more vague. It's like experience. So if you have done a lot of implementation projects and they can show you those, then or you have worked with big brands, then there is a better chance to work with that person. So experience is definitely one. In terms of skills, something that you might notice is like communication. How does the sales process? So if they emailing you, how does that work? Are they proactive in communicating things? You can ask them if they have any kind of project management running for you, or is it just going to be email updates that you're going to get? How often are these email updates going to come, and so on? So you can look at like communication. Everybody says they have communication skills, but you kind of can test for that as well. And then I guess from an analytics perspective, like if you look for Google Analytics experts, right? How long have they been in the field? I mean, Google Analytics really has been around since 2007. Now, if they say they have 50 years of experience in Google Analytics, that's obviously false. And if they only have 1 year experience, then that's obviously also something that you can pit against other candidates as well. So yeah, I guess experience, how long you are in the field, the technical abilities, that's always something that I would look for. If they're able to write an SQL query, if they need to, or if they're able to know what actually these key technologies are. When we look at Google Analytics, do you know what BigQuery is, right? Can you pull data out of BigQuery or so? Depending on what your project actually needs. But I would caution everybody to look for hard facts. So you don't need to have somebody that has a university degree in data science or something, because that's our field of implementation or of Google Analytics moves so fast that the field is just too young, and you can get a really good implementer who has 1 or 2 years of experience if he has worked on the right projects already and can get things done really efficiently for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Cannot agree more. And by the way, one of the greatest ways to hone these skills in the realm of analytics is to attend our Measure Summit. And maybe you could tell more about it, what it is about, and how can we attend?
Yeah, so Measure Summit is coming up. If you haven't heard about it, Measure Summit is coming up from the 3rd of October till the 5th, I think. Yeah, it's a 3-day event, and it's a virtual conference. So we interview the experts in the field of analytics. We have some really cool guests like Julius from Analytics Mania, Simo Ahava, Leah Pika, Pep from Conversion XL is going to be there as well. So we have really cool guests that have agreed to be interviewed, and we are going to interview them, and then we have a little live viewing for these 3 days with live chat going on and a live moderation. It's a cooperation between me and Mercer from measurementmarketing.io, and we are going to talk about everything measurement, and there's a really cool community around it. Really cool chat around this, and there are always cool conversations. We're also going to have some prizes, some fun things during the live stream. So definitely check that out if you're interested. And the coolest thing for this is, I mean, we started this in the pandemic and we kind of kept it going now. The cool thing about this is a conference, and if you are not able to attend, if you are able to attend from your computer screen, then you're already there because we don't have a in-person kind of thing. It's all remote. And you can get the ticket for free. Just head over to measuresummit.com and register, and then you'll get your ticket, and then you can watch all of these talks that we have with the Measure experts on the 3rd of October for 3 days. It's going to go 3 days.
Yeah, guys, you should definitely hurry up because this is an amazing conference with truly exceptional and inspiring savvy people. So it's a fantastic way to learn. These people I admire and I learn from on a daily basis.
Yeah. And then that's kind of the spirit of it. Like, I think that people who are in the field oftentimes don't go out and do like us, write blog posts or make videos or so. And here's the chance that we can get them in front of a camera and just like try to pull out their wisdom and have them talk about certain aspects of their work. And yeah, every time there are really cool people there. I mean, the names that I've already mentioned are probably some people that you know, but there are some newcomers there as well. And I'm actually most excited about them because there's always some nuggets that I haven't really come across yet, and always like cool new little things that we learn from the newcomers.
Yeah, true. So I would talk to you for ages, but unfortunately we have to wrap this up, and this is the end of the session. So maybe you want to say something as a summary. It's just to everyone.
Yeah, I guess we talked quite the mix here, but at the same time, it's all about selling analytics services. I think it's a really good field to get into, especially because GA4 is now coming out, and there's lots of people that need to still switch over or haven't even heard about GA4. So that's something, if you are looking for a freelance career and you think you can do it, there might be an opening there. And everything that I've talked about is also something we talk not only inside, like internally with, because we are also selling services at MeasureSchool, but we are actually talking with our Measure Masters. So we have a community of people who want to learn and improve their measurement skills. And inside of our Measure Master program, we train them, but also give them a place for community. And that's what we talk a lot about as well. Like, how do you actually sell a certain project, or how do our clients react to when GA4 breaks or something like that. So you are not alone as a measurement professional. So if you are interested, you can also check out Measure Masters at measureschool.com/measuremasters.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julian. And thank you so much, guys, for staying with us. This was an amazing talk, and I hope this also was helpful for you. And if you want to check our content, so please go to our YouTube channel, MeasureSchool, and also to our webpage, measureschool.com. And I'm just happy measuring. See you next time.